Welcome to the Becoming Superhuman podcast, where we interview extraordinary people to bring you the skills and strategies to overcome the impossible. And now, here's your host, Jonathan Levy.
Before we get started, I want to let you know that this episode is brought to you by my very own Become a Speed Demon Masterclass. I know that every single one of you knows the feeling of not having enough time to do all the things that you need to do in a day, much less the things that you want to do, like leisure learning, time with friends and family, and just relaxing. Well, in this course, the Speed Demon Masterclass, I'm going to take you through all the different skills, strategies, and techniques that I have used and developed over the last 10 years to accomplish superhuman feats like running multiple companies at once, running a nonprofit, going through 2 different degrees while running businesses on the side, and many, many more things. I'm going to teach you my philosophies of productivity, as well as the preeminent theories of how to manage your time. And then I'm going to show you all the behind the scenes hacks that automate my life and make it easier and more fun so that I have time for the things that matter. To take advantage of this course and learn more about it, visit becomeaspeeddemon.com. And by the way, we just completely redid the course with all new videos for 2019. So don't miss out and visit becomeaspeeddemon.com. Greetings, super amigos, and welcome to this week's episode. You guys, today we are once again joined by I know you're not supposed to pick favorites, but probably one of my favorite guests of all time, and definitely one of the guests that we've had on the show the most, and that is Chris Bailey, productivity expert, international best-selling author, and blogger extraordinaire? ? Chris is the best-selling author of The Productivity Project, which has been published in 11 languages. His second book just came out, Hyperfocus, How to Be More Productive in a World of Distraction, and it was published in 7 languages at launch. He also writes about productivity at alifeofproductivity.com and speaks to organizations around the world on how they can become more productive without hating the process. You've probably seen him in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, New York Magazine, Huffington Post, Harvard Business Review, TED, Fortune, Fast Company, and Lifehacker, among others. So, into today's episode. First off, for the first time, Chris and I talked about more than just productivity. We talked also about distraction, mindset, and how to get into the right state of mind to be healthier, happier, and of course, more productive. We talked about why he wrote another book on avoiding distraction after Cal Newport wrote Deep Work, with which Chris took like a champ. And as we always do, we joked and laughed and shared geek out strategies. This episode, honestly, is jam-packed full of different strategies for you to live a better and more productive life. And if you take away just 1 or 2 of them, I have no doubt that you will be a little bit more superhuman. So without any further ado, let me present to you my super friend, Mr. Chris Bailey. Chris Bailey, welcome to the show, my friend. I wish that I would have hit record 5 minutes ago so people could hear your witty banter. How are you?
The preamble. I'm good, my friend. How are you?
Good. I think you are setting a record for most times invited back. And it's not because you always behave, because you don't.
No, I do not. That is something that I'm not. I was teasing the Sauna Story. Can I tell you the Sauna Story?
Let's start with the Sauna Story.
It involves this podcast and the sauna at a Good Life Fitness in Kingston, Ontario, Canada. It's like 2 worlds colliding. So I was like hanging out. I was hanging out in the sauna, like a little towel wrapped around me. There's another fella in there. I think he was from Somalia. We were chatting, and I was mostly asking him about what he did, about his life, and things like that. And he left. He's like, "Have a good day, buddy." And I said, "You too, man." And he like burst open the door. Like probably 10 seconds out, like if it's possible to even burst open a door, he burst it open 10 seconds after he left. And he said, "You wrote The Productivity Project. I love your interviews on becoming superhuman." And so if Abdi is listening to this pod right now, I haven't been to the gym in a while because I've been traveling quite a bit, but I'm looking forward to the next sauna session with you.
That is so cool.
Isn't that neat?
Yeah, I love that.
It's pretty sweet. Like two worlds colliding is what that experience was.
Right. Especially when they collide when you're in a towel.
Yeah, when you're like mostly nude. Those are the best collisions, usually. Yeah.
I love that. Chris, tell us what you've been up to since the last time you graced us with your presence on the show.
I've been watching a lot of Netflix. I've been drinking a lot of whiskey. I've been just laying on the couch. I got a new onesie. I have a new Windows sweater. Maybe we can put a picture of that in the show notes. It's a very it's one of those Christmas. No, I'm just kidding. No, I've been writing another book. It's about focus. You joked before, like, why did you write a different version of Deep Work by Cal Newport? Which I always laugh at because, in my eyes, I love Deep Work. It's kind of a companion guide to that. So the Deep Work is kind of the more philosophy of why we should implement these practices of delving deeply into the work. And the book that I've assembled is very much about the science side, the neuroscience, the tactical things that we can do every day in order to get better. And honestly, this came from a place of being distracted after I wrote the last book. As tough as that is to admit, one of the topics I was writing about was, we should disable distractions. We should tame these things. We should do all this stuff. And I realized distractions became more prominent in my work myself after I was off of that deadline. So what's up? I was probably missing a part of the bigger picture. And indeed I was. So that set me off on this whole trail, this whole quest to get to the bottom of, we know what we have to do in order to work more deeply. We know what we have to do in order to be less distracted. Just get a distractions blocker, then all your problems will be solved, right? Mm-hmm. But it's a bit more complicated and nuanced than that, I found. And through a lot of self-experimentation and purposely making myself bored and digging into the research and flying out to meet researchers all around the world who study the science of attention, I got to the bottom, hopefully, at least near the bottom of what it takes to actually be more productive when we're surrounded by so much BS and distractions all the time.
I love that. And I think that's so important because I also, teach a course on productivity, and I still have found it's so sneaky, this distraction. Yeah. You'll eliminate something. You're like, all right, I'm disabling all the WhatsApp and all the message and everything. And then all of a sudden you get something that's supposed to make you more productive, like Slack. And there goes your productivity. I recently figured out that over a 3-month period, I spent 90 hours on Slack. 3 months. Wow. So that is literally 2 whole work weeks that I spent on Slack.
Yeah. And that's just your time. Forget about your attention and the time that it takes to transition out of that Slack mode, right? One of the most alarming stats that I encountered in writing the book, it was conducted by a team of researchers at Microsoft. And, oddly enough, the company that's so responsible for why we're so distracted in the first place does a lot of research into our attention. And they found that when we're working in front of a computer, when we have our phone nearby, we focus on one thing for just 40 seconds before we switch to doing something else. And when we have apps like Slack and Skype open in the background, that lowers to 35 seconds. I honestly, when I encountered the stat, I didn't believe it. And so I flew out to meet the researchers there and interview them about their methodology and things like that. And I flew out a second, third time to see how they work. And this really is the state that we work inside of these days. But at the same time, we're so shitty on ourselves when we find that I'm so surprised you invited me back on. I just give you such an editing job and piss everybody off. But we're so hard on ourselves when we find that we've gotten distracted. And honestly, we shouldn't be, because this level of distraction, even though we interrupt ourselves every 40 seconds or we're interrupted by somebody else every 40 seconds, this isn't our fault at the same time. There's a lot of wiring in our brain that makes us predisposed to this stuff, but that does make it worth getting out ahead of this impulse.
Yeah. Yeah. So what do we do? I mean, I'm at a risk of blowing my whole hour of questions, but what the heck do we do? And what else did you learn? Because I know it's not just our productivity. We're literally losing the ability to focus.
Well, this is the thing that I think a lot of people miss, is that and I missed this at the start of writing this book, at the start of this journey. My productivity was, kind of not in the gutter, but it wasn't where I wanted it to be after the last book came out. And I realized, like, in looking at the research, it's a bigger idea than just productivity, like you just said. Like, and if there's one idea that shines through the research, it's that the state of our attention determines the state of our lives. And so what that means is if we're distracted in each moment, those moments build up day by day, week by week, month by month, year by year, to create a life that feels distracted and like we don't have a clear direction and like we're kind of overwhelmed in the moment. But the converse is true when we make an active effort to focus on what's meaningful in each moment, what's truly important in our work, in our life, spending time with loved ones. We're both engaged right now, not to each other, but that would be nice. Maybe in another live show. But like spending time with our loved ones when we're at home, that's the most important, meaningful thing that we could be doing in that moment. And so I think that's kind of the key. But, I think there's a jump that we need to make. We think that distractions are the problem, but that's not true. That's kind of a symptom of the problem, which goes deeper than that, which is that our mind craves and pays attention naturally to anything that is new and novel. There's a novelty bias embedded within our brain by which our brain releases and rewards us with a hit of dopamine for each new and novel thing at which we direct our attention. And so we wake up and then we go to Instagram and we get a hit of dopamine. We go check our email, we get another hit. We go chat over Skype, we get a hit. We go to Slack, we get a hit. And we bounce around in this loop of apps and different distractions because of this novelty bias. And so I don't think the problem is distraction. I think the problem is overstimulation, which makes us crave that same level of stimulation, which leads us to bounce around these things every 40 seconds. And so the answer then isn't to tame distractions because we're still going to crave them. We don't really deal with the root. The answer, I think, and the best solution to this problem is to lower that level of stimulation so we can think more. We can be more deliberate with our focus. We can be more insightful with our thoughts. We can connect ideas more succinctly and cleanly. I think that's the better path.
I love that. How?
There are so many ways. I think spending less time on technology is another big one. One of my favorite features of the iPhone is grayscale mode. And maybe you've had a guest or two talk about this mode, where if you go into the settings app on your phone and you search for grayscale, GRAY scale, it turns your phone screen black and white. And so it's instantly less novel. There's not all that color psychology where, companies like Facebook A/B test 50 shades of red to get the color for the notification button that stimulates your mind and the receptors in your brain the most. You eliminate that. Suddenly the world is in color and your digital world is in black and white. Distractions blockers, harp on them a little bit, but they do work for especially the ones where you have to restart your computer in order to access a lot of these sites. Cold turkey is one that I use and swear by. Freedom is another distractions blocker that I love. But also, another simple one is, every morning here in Canada, I get the physical newspaper at my door. And so I don't read any news online because, the news online refreshes every 3-5 minutes. And that constantly gets you like, okay, I need another hit of the news. The newspaper refreshes once a day and you go beyond the front page headlines. I think that's another kind of side of this, which is that we underestimate the effect that the information we consume has on our mind. There's one study that I read about in the book that involved the Boston Marathon bombings in 2013. And the study looked at two groups of people. The first group of people watched 6 or more hours of news coverage about the Boston Marathon bombings. And the second group was in the actual marathon, was running in the thing. And they found that the group who watched 6 or more hours of news coverage about the bombings were more likely to develop PTSD than somebody who was in the marathon and personally affected by it. The single biggest of fear and anxiety in our lives is how much time we spend watching TV talk shows and news shows. This matters a lot. And so sometimes, making the things that we consume a bit less stimulating and a bit slower, a bit more thoughtful, so we can actually think about them as we consume them instead of just being stimulated by them. Those are some simple ways, but technology stimulates us so much. So often our life is just like one screen to another screen to another screen to another screen to another screen. And that's a problem that we need to get out ahead.
Yeah. I always try to remind people, you think that your iPhone is your friend, but it's not your friend, right? Everything about it itself and everything on it has been designed to suck you in. And I'm not saying this like some conspiracy theory. I'm saying I'm from Silicon Valley. I've met Nir Eyal. Everyone in Silicon Valley knows Nir Eyal. They've all read a book by a Stanford psychologist on how to literally make your product addictive. This book is called Hooked. Right? Yeah. How to design habit-forming products, which is why you can't stop scrolling through your Instagram feed. It's not your friend.
No. And our phone has a way of tricking us into thinking things are more important than they actually are too. Because in that moment when you get a notification from ESPN or Twitter or whatever the hell, that is the most salient potential object of attention at which you could be directing your focus in that moment. It's more salient than the person that you're with. It's more salient than that report that you're writing, that project that you're hunkered down on, and it sucks you in. And even though it's just a ESPN thing, that, like you said, it pulls you into that wormhole, and then you lose 30 minutes because you see that you have other things in that digital world too. And so the costs go beyond just, some of the best 5 minutes that somebody could spend on this stuff is to comb through the notification settings on your phone and to disable any alert that you don't want to lose a bunch of productivity over, that you don't want to trip you up every 40 seconds. The fewer of those you have, the more productive you become. And that's, our phone is like this black hole of productivity so much of the time. We don't need it as much as we think we do.
We certainly don't. And people are happy and not just productive, but happy in proportion to the amount of time that they spend on this damn thing.
Well, this is the thing. My fiance and I were hanging, her name is Arden. We were hanging out in the living room the other day, and she was tapping around kind of mindlessly on her phone, and she looked really sad. And I asked her, Arden, what are you on? She said, I'm on Tinder. No, she wasn't on Tinder. She was on Instagram. and if I think of the most wholesome social media application, Instagram comes to mind. There's beautiful, those food pictures where things shrink down and a whole meal is made in 2 minutes. That usually takes half an hour. Very satisfying. All these oddly satisfying videos where there's the knife cutting the sand. A lot of cooking things, a lot of Instagram fitness models on my feed. I don't know why. Maybe because I have no clue why that is the case. But, essentially the things that it's like a personalized feed of what is most novel to us. If you go into the recommended tab on it, but she looked really sad. And I said, are you happy right now? And she reflected on it a bit. She said, I guess I'm not. Then she picked up a book and she got immersed in the book and she looked a lot happier. But it's kind of like when we're in Instagram or when we're in Snapchat and then we accidentally swipe over to the screen where we see a picture of ourselves. We never have a smile on our face when we do that. We're always kind of sitting there with a numbed mind and just kind of hanging out. Our phones don't make us happy. They make us stimulated. Maybe when we're having a conversation with somebody, a phone conversation with more depth than just a text conversation, that gives us meaning, but usually they don't.
No, absolutely. So tell me what your day looks like, because lately I've realized that if I start my day with the phone or even look at it in the morning. I even downloaded an app for the Apple Watch, which I don't let notifications come in on, for Wim Hof, so that I can do my timing of my breathing exercises in the morning without looking at my phone. Because I realized even the apps, the couple apps that for emergency reasons are allowed to penetrate through the do not disturb and show me notifications are enough to ruin my morning. The other day, there was some mix up on my bank. Somehow my tax payment didn't come through. And I started my morning grabbing my phone so that I could do my breathing exercises and log my time and all that kind of stuff. The first thing I saw in the morning, and just imagine like how the rest of my day went, was we've put a hold on your bank account. If you don't call us immediately, your account will be frozen. Now, it was an hour and a half until the bank even opened. So like that notification.
Was it a Nigerian phone number or was it?
No, it was my Israeli bank account. And it's like the government has put a hold on your bank account and is going to seize your assets. Call us, but we're not open for an hour and a half. Like, so how do you think my day went?
Yeah.
And I was like, that's it. Like, I can't touch the phone in the morning. I just need to use this secondary timer. So tell me how your day goes. I know last time we spoke, you had some really interesting habits around internet and internet access. I want to hear more about that.
Yeah. So between 8 p.m. and 8 a.m. every single day, I'm disconnected from the internet. And that is the case 100% of the time when I'm at home and probably 70 to 80% of the time when I'm traveling. Because, sometimes when I travel, you have to be at a rehearsal first thing in the morning for a talk that I'm giving or like a tech check or, you got to hop on a plane and see if it's delayed. So it's not possible to follow 100% of the time. But when I'm at home and when I know I have nothing in the morning or the evening, my phone is off. It's disconnected from the internet. I can listen to a podcast that happened to be downloaded or an audiobook that happened to be downloaded, but I can't encounter any new stimulating information and bite-sized pieces. And so it's a wonderful day to kind of ease out of one day and into the next day and defend your attention a little bit too. I have a book by my bed instead of a phone. And so instead of spending half an hour on my phone when I wake up, I open the book, I connect ideas, I start the day off. And I find that more than answering a few emails, that connecting information the first thing in the morning, that propels me forward better than any other thing that I've tried, better than meditation. I meditate a bit later in the day, better than a breakfast, better than a coffee. Personally, I drink far less coffee than I used to. I haven't had any in a few weeks because I think caffeine is overrated, but we can get to that a little bit. But it's my favorite way of starting the day because I find that when I begin the day by connecting information, that mindset and that playfulness with the ideas and the information and the weird things I encounter throughout the day, that progresses forward instead of that reactive mode. Because so much of the time when we're on our phone, we're playing defense. We're like just dealing with the stuff that comes in. We're whacking a mole on email and tweets and other social media apps and just the information that happens to come in. I want to start the day looking inside my mind instead of outside into the world around me. And so that's how I do it. And so I wake up, I usually pick up a book first thing, then I make a cup of herbal tea. I often do some yoga or some meditation. Then I get to work and I also shower. I'm not one of those crazy evening showers. I don't understand these people. My fiance is one of these people and we're together despite of that fact, not because of it. You're not an evening shower, are you?
No, I switched my workouts to the morning, but we did a sleep challenge with Nick Littlehills, who's like the sleep coach to a lot of the world's top celebrities and athletes. And actually, it turns out that either a hot or a cold shower will actually prepare your body for bed because what you want to do is drop temperature. So if you take a cold shower before bed, you would actually think it would wake you up, but it will lower your core temperature, which will put you to sleep.
What about a bath? Do you know what a bath does?
Before bed is fantastic.
A normal bath, the normal people bath.
Yeah, the normal people, not a Wim Hof bath. The irony of it is a hot bath will also cool you down by bringing the blood to the surface, and then the blood cools at the surface. So one way or another, it's actually pretty good.
Oh, I'll have to try that. Yeah. I like starting and ending the day on a slow note because, so much of the work that we do, it revs up our mind, doesn't it? Like we start the day at like 20 RPM and then we get that email from the bank and then our mind is spinning at 120 RPM, but we need to wind it down. We need to kind of spin down and kind of ease into the day. So that's usually what I do. I'd be curious to listen to a previous episode when I was on last and hear how different the routine is because I'm constantly changing this thing depending on the projects that I'm working on. And honestly, I travel probably 50, 60, 70% of the time. And so that is a whole wrench that's thrown into the plan by itself. And so it's difficult to form habits and routines around that, even though you try your best. But those are the elements that stay consistent, at least.
Yeah. Well, and I think there's something important to be learned actually from what you just said, which is the adaptability is a really key component of it, right? Like if you're in a period where you're writing a book, what's going to be productive for you is going to be to disconnect, not just from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. You need to disconnect, period.
Oh,
Whereas
yeah.
if you're promoting a book and you disconnect, you're in a world of like, if you were completely disconnected right now, your book would not be doing as well as it is.
No.
Congratulations, by the way, because I saw that it's doing very well.
Oh, thank you. I've heard it's doing, which is cool because I essentially ripped off deep work. No, I'm just kidding. No,
right.
I'm actually like, it was a book that was kind of born of a struggle that I was having myself. So that, like, I think a lot of people talk about reading every study front to back, but I actually did that. Like I had papers scattered around this office. I don't know if you've ever watched one of those like crime shows where somebody's got the murder map and they've got string attached to pins, attached to newspaper articles, attached to memos and like other letters that people have written. That was like the state of my office when I was putting this book together. And so like I wrote this book mostly for myself, honestly. It was kind of a selfish endeavor in that way. But I thought, I'll put this out into the world and, talk about the struggles that I've had and the science behind this stuff and what we can all do to focus a bit better. And there are some curious things along the way. Like one of the most remarkable things, so I devote the first half of the book to focus, but the second half of the book is devoted to the power of letting our mind wander, because it's kind of the flip side of focus. There's times during the day that we're focused and times that we're unfocused and not really looking or paying attention to anything in particular. And just as focus, and I call it hyperfocus when we get immersed in one thing, is the most productive mode of our mind, this scatter focus where we just let our mind wander is the most creative mode of our mind. It's what lets us plan. It's what lets us set intentions for the future. It lets us rest, and it allows us to process all the information that we pay attention to when we're focused. And it's something that we don't get enough of when we just bounce around from distraction to distraction when we're just focused all day. Focusing is like, it's good, but it's probably, focusing on stuff all day long is one of the worst things that we can do for our productivity and our attention, frankly, because we need those moments of rest, those little spaces between the bouts of focus.
Absolutely. Are you still a practitioner of the Pomodoro Technique?
A little bit. Honestly, I find that, when you get to that less novel state, you can focus for longer than 25 minutes at one time. So usually one focus session is 45, 50 minutes for me. And I find it a bit too regimented. I found what works better than the Pomodoro Technique is very good at the start, but eventually you get to the point where you become aware of how much energy you have. You find, okay, I have a lot of energy right now. I'm on a roll. I'm going to keep going and take a break a bit later. And so I think working with that awareness is somewhat like just understanding our rhythms and understanding, the natural rhythms of our body, of our mind. And frankly, it depends on the work that we're doing. Like if you were getting a massage, you wouldn't want to get a massage for 25 minutes and take a 5-minute break, then 25 minutes, then a 5-minute break. You would just want a 1-hour massage because it's pretty effortless. And so, we expend mental energy in proportion to how often we have to regulate our attention throughout the day. And so when we don't have to force ourselves to focus on something, the fact of the matter is we need fewer breaks anyway. And so I think, minding how much energy we have is pretty critical there.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I teach the Pomodoro Technique the same way, which is it's a great way to get into focus. But if you're on a roll, don't take a break because the dogma says that you should take a break.
Yeah, listen to yourself. And this is a theme that comes up again and again and again and again in terms of the research that I do and in this book too, is we're so hard on ourselves, man. Like when we get distracted, we say like, Jesus, Chris, well, Jesus, Jonathan, why can't you focus? When we burn some time on Netflix, we think, man, I'm such a lazy bum. We're, like this is the voice that follows us regardless of what we do. But this is universal. This is true for everybody. And when you actually look at the science behind attention, you realize, it's not our fault that we can't focus. It's this novelty bias that's embedded within our brain. And sure, we need to, work ahead of this. We maybe need to become a bit less stimulated because technology does overstimulate us. But at the same time, be kind to yourself. When you notice you've been distracted, don't harp on yourself, but notice why. Notice, okay, did I pay attention to something that was new and novel? The answer is usually yes, because you diverted your attention to anything that was new and novel, that was more novel than the thing that you were working on in the first place. And get back on track and understand the rhythms of your mind and your body. That awareness, I think, is so critical to productivity. Like, we can either work on autopilot mode or we can work with thoughtfulness. And the more often we work with thoughtfulness, I think the more productive we become.
Absolutely. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't ask you also for your latest productivity hacks, any stuff that you've discovered since the last time that we spoke. I know you are of the firm belief that, there's no app that's going to make you more productive, and it's habits. But what has changed since you published your last book?
I think all of the travel, I forget when we were chatting last, but since it's frankly a pretty cool problem to have, but I get invited to do talks around the world because the books are out in, I think, up to 17 languages now. And so there's all these opportunities that come in that are hard to say no to. Well, the credit goes to my publishers because they sold all the rights, but it would be like, this is the kind of cool part, is like, I can say I've written 30 some books, even though I've written just 2. Because they're out in all these other languages. But honestly, the travel stuff has been really, really challenging to be productive around, because so often you have to be on the next flight. You have to always be somewhere that you're not. And so kind of cultivating a sort of mindfulness and self-kindness around those practices. Honestly, the travel hacks that I do today are some of the most fun ones. Like very, very simple things, like everything from getting a hanging toiletry bag that, hangs in the hotel bathroom, so you don't have to just unpack everything every time. That's been a lifesaver.
Smart.
Having getting the right credit card. I'm a big fan of the American Express Platinum. It costs an arm and a leg. It's like $500 a year or something. But in every Marriott hotel chain, you get an upgrade to the next best room. And so if you're staying at like a fancy ass hotel, you get the upgrade to the next room up. And so sometimes you're staying in an already pretty good room, so you get an upgrade to like the presidential suite or whatever it is. Yeah, and that one upgrade alone is worth more than $500. Plus you get all the upgrades to the lounges at the airport. Mm-hmm. So I think choosing the right credit card, that's my personal favorite. I think I make that amount of money back many, many times over. Having a default pack list. If you travel a lot, a default pack list is one of the best things that you can have. So I have a text file on my computer that has every possible thing that I could want to take on a trip with me. There's an app called Text Expander. And so I type the words P pack list, and then that keyword automatically expands to be this whole text file that includes everything that I could possibly pack. I delete everything that I don't need. And so it takes me probably all of 1 or 2 minutes to define my pack list for each individual trip. And you can code it so that it asks you how many days you're going to be traveling for. And so it asks you that when you, type in this snippet. It says, how many days will we be gone for? I type in 2, and then it pre-populates how many socks I should pack, how many pairs of underwear I should pack, how many dress shirts, and all of those different things. And so I think that the hacks around traveling and just being mobile all seconds of the day, that's been really helpful.
Yeah, that's a really good one. And that's a brilliant idea of, I use text expansion on the Mac built in, synced with the iPhone and stuff, but that's a brilliant idea of having a default pack list. I love that. Another one that I really like that I'm going to start doing is, Tim Ferriss does this. Stay at the same hotels and just have a box of clothes there that they keep in the, in the storeroom. So I go to Phoenix a lot for Genius Network and all kinds of events. So just having clothes there so I can travel with a carry-on, and that's it. How many pairs of pants and dress shirts do I need? It's an extra $500 because I wear crappy pants and crappy dress shirts because my ego doesn't need the boost of I don't even know,
of a fancy
nice brand of dress.
Gucci dress shirts.
That's what I was going to say, but I don't even know if they make dress shirts.
That's the only brand I know.
Is Ralph Lauren a nice dress shirt? I don't know.
I don't even know anymore. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. But I will tell you the best possible MacBook Pro that they make,
Yeah.
Awesome. Those are really, really good hacks.
Things is another app that I've fallen in love with. It's, you kind of have to be in the Mac or the Apple ecosystem, but the app called Things as a task list manager, I really don't like to-do list apps, but this one is just so beautiful. It's like things kind of float around. There's tactic feedback when you're using it on the iPhone. There's an iPad version. There's a Mac version. You can get a version for your Apple Watch. And so if a task occurs to you over the course of the day, you just tap a button, you say, remember the milk, and then it'll add that to your Things inbox. It's just a wonderful app if you're in the Apple ecosystem. That's another one that I've fallen in love with. I still use, I probably talked about this last episode, Simple Note for capturing all of the ideas that occur to me throughout the day, little things I should follow up on. And so I review that every week when I'm planning out my week and capture things from there and note the things to follow up on. And, something else that I've started to do, just a little hack that I review every week, is an incubation list. And so on this incubation list, there's everything that my mind is processing in that moment that I don't need to make a decision on yet. But it's stuff like, what wedding vows should I write? What wedding website should I create? Should I create a demo reel for my speaking stuff? Like just simple things like that aren't urgent, but that still need to be brought to the forefront of my mind once a week, every week. And so that's a helpful list for me too. Just, little nudges like that help me make better decisions.
That's really, really cool. I love that. And you reminded me that I need to start writing my wedding vows.
Yeah, get on it. Are you writing them together, or what are you doing there?
Well, I'm going to write them myself and surprise her and embarrass her.
Oh, you're one of those guys.
No, I'm just kidding. Embarrass her with like how, heartwarming
with love.
And
yeah,
exactly.
Show her a side of you that she hasn't seen.
Oh, she's seen it. She just doesn't want anyone else to see it.
Oh, that's funny.
That's awesome. You know what I've gone to as my productivity hack? You're going to laugh, but I've taken it back to the old school, and I have been writing in a paper journal. And then my weekly to-do list, I'm writing in an erasable notebook every week and then carrying that notebook around. And it's been amazing.
That's awesome.
I just pull it out. It's like physical and I can feel it. And I get the satisfaction of crushing it out like 5 times after I finish the set. It's so much more satisfying than clicking a tick box.
Yeah.
And it's not for like every task. It's like, what are my high level objectives for the week? So like this week, it was pre-launch for the Ultimate Advantage course that we're releasing, which will already be out and the cart will already be closed by the time people hear this. Sorry. Support a staff member who just came back from maternity leave in getting set up for her new role, so on and so forth. So it's like, what are the big themes that I want to achieve this week? And it's the craziest thing, but weeks that I do it and weeks that I make a habit of opening it up when I take my computer out of my bag and just putting it next to me, I get way more done and it's way more high impact stuff. It's like Eisenhower Quadrant 2 level stuff as opposed to Quadrant 3, Quadrant 4 type stuff.
That's awesome. I think paper is really underrated, honestly. We spend when we're jotting stuff down on the computer too, it's that same thing where another world of distraction is just a tab or two away, or we go back to the home screen and see all that we have that's incoming and things are constantly flying at us. There's no notifications in a paper journal where you keep your daily intentions at the top, where, this is one of my favorite rituals. Maybe this is another hack that allows me to make my work a bit less novel. Honestly, the less overstimulated my mind is, the more productive I've found I can be, the more focused I am. And I think everybody that's listening will find this. But in that vein, one of my favorite new rituals is to take some paper to a coffee shop without my phone, without any internet connected devices. So, I bring some cash in case cards don't work, stuff like that. And I just sit down at a coffee shop. I order a tea or a latte, and I just brainstorm one thing. I have an outline of a project that I'm doing, and I take a pen to that paper and I move things around. I shift big sections around. This is how I've mind mapped both of my books. ropes and just at a coffee shop with no distractions around me. And it's one of my favorite rituals. I often go there to write a letter to my future self because that allows me to connect with where I want to be down the line and what I have to do to get there. I often plan out my year this way. I'll often go to a spa and just somewhere where I can disconnect and have a few days where I just plan and look at the different elements of my life and think, where do I want to be 1 year, 2 years down the line, 18 months down the line? And this is one of my favorite rituals for slowing down. If you have a big problem, a big thing that you're chewing through that you have an outline for, perhaps, go to a cafe with just that thing printed off and take a pen to it, because you'll be surprised by just how much more deeply you're able to become immersed in that.
You are so right. And you remind me of my senior year of college. I had a business back then as well. And I took this philosophy class, which was the most boring thing ever. It was the worst. And it was a 2-hour session where you had to sit in a room with this TA who had like long hair and didn't wear shoes. And he just like talked about like Plato, man. And they had it right, man. It was really bad. And I enjoyed philosophy classes, but this one was awful. And his whole rule was you can't take notes on the computer, which meant I couldn't do what I always did, which is answer emails and try to close sales while in class. So I just sat there with a notebook, and you know what happens is you just start thinking about like, here are all the things that are going on in my business that I need to address. And in just one session, I would come up with like 6 months of like strategy, right? Q1 stuff that we would say, stuff that does not happen. Like when the screen goes on, the brain goes off. And I promised myself after graduation that I would continue that habit of once a week sitting down for an hour or two. And I never did it. And it's such a shame. And I'm only now getting back into it. And I can only imagine whenever I see someone like Dan Sullivan, who's just achieved so much in their life, I'm like, that's what I could do if I didn't spend my whole day in front of the computer.
Yeah, that's what a lot of people can do. It's, that idea of slowing down. Oh man, philosophy professors though, God. Philosophers really like not the kind of the branch of philosophy where, they're thinking about how we should think and, that kind of high level overview of how we should be thinking and living our lives. That's fine. But like I'm holding a spoon in my hand right now. And there are some people who are like really into philosophy who will say, that's not a spoon. They'll like argue with you like, oh, what's your idea of a spoon? Maybe you're like, shut the like, oh my God. Sorry, there's another thing to blur, but it really bugs me that branch of philosophy. I just need to get that off my chest.
I love that. Well, you are all about productivity and practicality and living a life of practicality. So I cannot say that surprises me.
No, probably not. Do not talk to Arden about how often I ramble on about how much I dislike that branch of philosophy.
Oh, yeah. All right. Well, we'll have to have her on the show to talk about it.
Yeah, really.
Chris, first off, thank you for your very valuable time. This has been a pleasure. It's always a pleasure to chat with you. I want to make sure we let people know where the heck they can get this book, what this book is called, because I'm not sure we actually mentioned it.
Oh, I need to get better at self-promotion, evidently. I thought I dropped enough I dropped enough F-bombs. But the book is called Hyperfocus, How to Be More Productive in a World of Distraction. It's wherever books are sold, even audiobooks, if you like the soft, sultry tones of my soporific voice, you can get the audiobook. I recorded the audiobook in the same studio that Drake has recorded multiple albums in, and Justin Bieber recorded an album there too. So there you go. Hopefully that rubs off in the recording. I don't think it does because it's a book about productivity and focus, but you never know. Maybe you'll get, it is auto-tuned. No, I'm just kidding. It's not auto-tuned, but that's the book. It's called Hyperfocus. It's wherever books are sold. And my site is called A Life of Productivity. It's at alifeofproductivity.com. I just took that annoying newsletter pop-up off, so there's no ads and no pop-up, which is really nice.
Nice. Well, that's very kind of you. The marketer in me is like, why would you do that?
Why are you doing? Because I hate them myself. This is like an eternal struggle like that I have, because I hate that pop-up contributes to the amount of noise in the world, because I write about like eliminating distractions and focusing and being more productive. And so the instant somebody visits my site, it's like, check this stuff out. But at the same, like, it's very difficult because at the same time, you get a few hundred signups on that newsletter pop up every day. But on the other hand, you're annoying everybody. And so, yeah, I finally, just as an experiment, I thought, growth is nice, but I just want to like look at the peeps that are already following my work and try to help them out because it's doing okay. And so that's my philosophy, at least right now. Maybe by the time this goes up, you'll go and there'll be like 5 pop-ups that come up.
So we will put all of those links for people so that they can not get pop-ups on your site. Chris Bailey, always a pleasure chatting with you. Good luck on the book launch. I don't think you need it, but I'm excited to one day wind up in the same room with you. We're going to make it happen after 3 years of knowing one another.
We got to do it. We got to have a sauna session together.
Yes. With, what was his name? Adib?
Abdi. Yeah. Abdi.
We're going to make it happen. Abdi, contact me for details.
We got to find him. We got to make this happen. We should record a live podcast in a sauna with Abdi.
We could do that.
You think that's feasible? Do you think we can make that happen?
Tim Ferriss did an episode with Rick Rubin, and Rick Rubin agreed to only do it if it was recorded in a sauna.
That's such a Rick Rubin thing to do, isn't it?
Rick Rubin, but he can afford to. So.
Yeah. Actually, his house just burned down, didn't it?
You're kidding
from the
me.
California wildfire?
It wasn't from trying to run electrical equipment in a sauna?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, probably from the podcast. For Tim Ferriss was the one that did it. But yeah, I thought because of the California wildfire, the whole house was, and he was talking about like how he wasn't really sad for the loss, but he was sad because there was this 150-year-old tree in the back, and like you can build another house, but you can't build another 150-year-old tree. And I thought that's a very Rick Rubin thing to say.
So yeah, I was going to say that's a very Rick Rubin thing to say.
Yeah. You should have him on the podcast. Although I don't know what you'd have to do in order to make that happen.
Probably have to sell my soul.
Yeah, you might have to do something ridiculous.
I'd be willing to. If anyone out there knows Rick Rubin,
yeah,
I will do mortifying things.
See, that's an episode I'd want to listen to. Yeah, thank you so much for having me on, man. It's always good to be here and chat with you.
Yeah, let's do it again soon. Write another book, and then I can have you back. This whole podcast is just excuses to have Chris Bailey back on the show, guys.
Man, we should do an episode where I don't promote anything. Here's a weird thing. I don't think I've ever, like looking at the last few years, I don't think I've ever done a podcast where I just like chat with somebody. How shallow is that? Like it's always to promote something.
We can make it happen. When are you going to launch your own podcast? That's the question. Or does that not fit into your worldview of creating less noise?
That's happening in a couple months. You will be happy to know.
Oh, I will be happy to know. I will be happy to attend.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. I've been thinking about an idea for many, many years. Like I know there's a lot of, conversation shows. There's a lot of productivity shows, things like that. But I wanted to do something very different. And so that'll be my tease. Like every episode, 20 to 30 minutes each, and just about becoming a better human being. Yeah, so look for that coming down the pike.
Beautiful. Well, probably by the time this episode comes out, that will be in the show notes, which is more than enough reason for people to visit superhuman.blog and search for Chris Bailey and see the long list of episodes that are all about him promoting.
Yeah.
But besides that, you will find a link to his new podcast.
Thanks for having me, man. That was fun.
Take care, brother. All right, super friends, that is all we have for you today. But I hope you guys really enjoyed the show, and I hope you learned a ton of actionable information, tips, advice that will help you go out there and overcome the impossible. If you've enjoyed the show, please take a moment to leave us a review on iTunes or Stitcher, or drop us a quick little note on the Twitter machine @GoSuperhuman. Also, if you have any ideas for anyone out there who you would love to see on the show, we always love to hear your recommendations. You can submit on our website, or you can just drop us an email and let us know. That's all for today, guys. Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks for tuning in to the Becoming Superhuman podcast. For more great skills and strategies, or for links to any of the resources mentioned in this episode, visit www.becomingasuperhuman.com/podcast. We'll see you next time.